Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. This is your host, Stephen Brandis, coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the last couple podcasts that have been put out. Two age group athletes, two very high performing age group athletes, winning St. George overall female race and winning the Ironman Texas overall age group males race, and just kind of hearing about their training, what their training was like leading into it. Just a lot of talk about preparation, training, and I think the two interesting things about the two different interviews were how different the training was for each of them leading into it. And I think that, well, I got a lot of feedback that people really enjoyed one the interviews. You're not always listening to me talk the whole time, which is what you're going to get today because a lot of races have happened, and thankfully, many of my athletes performed well, and so I get to talk about it and just talk about the training behind their accomplishments, and that's what we're going to do today. A couple things. So Ironman Wisconsin. I feel like I talk too fast. Ironman Wisconsin is coming up. We're within that 12-week window. So we're preparing. Athletes are preparing. We have some big races here. Rockford just happened. That was a great race. Door County in a couple weeks. That's happening. A lot of athletes are racing in that. Age group nationals, many others, but of course, Ironman Wisconsin for us is a very big one here. And we're in that prep. And I think the one thing, this like overarching conversation that's been happens every time around this is that everybody seems to be losing run fitness right now. It's the heat, everybody, it's the heat. It's that reminder that when the temperature gets to that 70, 80, 85 degrees, humidity is over 50%, it zaps you. It overheats your body. It makes you slow down. And at Rockford this past weekend, or not this past weekend, but the last race, is that it was incredibly hot. We had athletes the day before, do the Verona Triterium, which is a sprint and Olympic. It's in Verona, and it was actually my first triathlon ever. Same thing, run course, get to the run, get to the bike. The swim was hot as well, and you're just seeing these heart rates that are so elevated. Some athletes, I'm like, I've never seen your heart rate that high. And some of it is they're coming out of the water, a hot water, so their core temp's already elevated. Get onto the bike, they can't produce the watts. Get on the run, and their heart rate's elevated, their core temp's elevated. And a lot of it on the coaching side is having some conversations that aren't that pleasant, where we're saying, hey, this run is not going to be great. You're not going to run a personal best. You might run 30 to 45 seconds a mile slower than what you want. It all depends on how you react to the heat, how much the heat prep has been done, and also how you just psychologically handle heat. And all of these things, you wish we could just train for them. But some people just don't handle heat very well. I had one guy, good heat prep, got out there and just zapped him. We went through the nutrition, went through a lot of things, and there were no real red flags. Just didn't handle heat very well. I mean, I had a guy do Kona back in 22 in Arizona, doing so much heat prep, got on the bike, got on the run, no power. And some of that could we have done it differently? Could we have done the heat prep in a different way? Yeah, potentially. But so I think a lot of when you're going in the heat is one, just adjust expectations of one, it's just going to feel harder. Running in heat doesn't feel good. It never feels good. It feels like you're working harder. I mean, everything's hotter. Your heart rate's higher. Your output is lower. So I think one, it's just expecting that like you're just not going to feel super great running in the heat. And yes, you need to train for it. You need to run in the heat. I mean, this Sunday I did a long run. We had a big open water swim session, and I'm preparing for Chattanooga, obviously, and it's just like that reminder that I went out and ran my workout, and I did that at like 3 p.m. and it was still 80, 82 degrees, high humidity, and I'm running, and I just feel terrible. But I'm like, no, this is like what it's going to feel like. And I had a bunch of mile repeats, And I started rolling through them, and almost like every one got better as they went, but it was brutal. Like I was sweating through my hat. I don't know, I could see half the time. People coming at me probably thought I was just a delirious runner with how I was moving all over the trail and I rubbing my eyes so I could barely see. But but you have to train in it. I think sometimes too, there's times that you can do long runs in the morning when it's fresh and cool, but sometimes it's really important to do your long runs at 1, 2, 3 o'clock where it's brutal and you have to learn to run through it. And also from a core temperature training, we know that active heat prep is just like really, really good and really is just it's so much more superior than passive heat prep. So if you can get outside in the heat, if you can do things overheated, we know that it elevates the core temperature higher. We know that it elevates it because a lot of times passive heat prep really hits skin temperature, but it doesn't really hit core temperature as great. So doing those runs, even though the production might not be as great, it gets you in that mindset and that preparation of what it feels like. So I just went on a tangent. I wasn't even expecting to talk about that, but that's the way it rolled. Consultations. So with Ironman Wisconsin coming up, what, 2 weeks? I've done 3 consultations with just athletes wanting to talk about the training, the final preparation into Ironman Wisconsin, which made it nice that we could talk about the same race. I mean, they were all on different calls, but it was just amazing to kind of like one person was like a very beginner triathlete doing their first Ironman, and you take for granted what you know and what other people don't know about. And it's also very different, right? When you're talking about a very elite level age grouper compared to, probably a 15, 16 hour Ironman athlete. The fueling is different. The pacing is different. The mindset is different. Some things, yes, transfer, from what very fast people do to what very beginner people do. But, I like those are the conversations that are really exciting because you're talking to someone that has similar nerves and anxiety, but then the execution in the day is very different. And that conversation had a lot more to do with the course and understanding the course and really talking through nutrition and aid stations and special needs and how to handle all of that. And that was a really good conversation. And but that one was fun. That one was definitely fun. Not saying the other two were not fun; they were great. But that one, because it was talking with like a very true beginner of the sport, um, it was good. It was good. So, okay, so today we're talking about athletes. We're talking about training. These are the podcasts that I love because we definitely kind of get into the weeds, about what happens behind podium performances. And the 3 athletes we're going to talk about are podium athletes, which is cool. And I love working with athletes who get on the podium. I mean, I've coached athletes to Ironman World Championships and 70.3 podiums and um, you know and yeah, I mean, age group national, overall national champions. I mean, I coach a lot of really great athletes, and the athletes that are kind of like at that getting to the tip of the age group or wanting to get on the podium. That just seems to be the athletes that really inquire a lot about coaching, and I love it. I love working with those athletes also, right? Because there's like a different side to that, But the beauty of like athletes who perform at a very high level versus athletes who perform at a medium level, a lot of them carry very similar personality traits. Some people just might be more genetically inclined to be on the podium, but like the work ethic is what I love. Like it's so awesome. It's like open up Training Peaks on a Monday and look over the weekend and think, yeah, like they're killing it. They're killing it. So, okay, so getting in here. So, 2 people we're going to talk about share very similar paths, okay? And both Eric and Scott, they both had Unbound with me, and they finished hours ahead of me. But both of them, Eric did Des Moines and Scott did Rockford half Ironman. So they both were in that lead into Unbound, which was the 1st of June. And just to preface, both of these athletes are very good. They're both Kona qualifiers. Scott has been to Kona. Eric is same. Eric's also training for Nice this year, And so both of them outright, just to let you know, like both of them have qualified for Kona. Their engines are very, very big, and they both work incredibly hard, and they both work very, very different as well. Both very different training styles. And the one common thing again is that they both prepared for Unbound 200-mile gravel race. And when we talk about having a build, a lot of times you want to have a second race pretty quickly after. And Unbound was tricky on a lot of reasons of what we'll get into because the enormity of a 200-mile race and the preparation and the mental side of it as well. But it can be very, very helpful to put in two big races within a 2 to 3 week span. And for Eric, it was 1 week, which was a little nerve wracking to think. I was like, Eric, if you don't recover from Unbound, Des Moines, Des Moines could be pretty bad. It could be pretty awful. Thankfully, he recovered well. But the nice thing is that it puts a lot of pressure on an athlete that the training into these races needs to be pretty high. And for some athletes, that would not work. For some athletes, if you put two big races within a month or 3 weeks of each other, sometimes the pressure and the stress would be too much to where they would actually perform pretty poorly, or they'd have the out of like, well, if this race goes pretty bad, I have this one. But knowing that they have that race within a close proximity for these two, because these two are very, very high performing athletes, they could handle that, and they really flourished in that. And the same thing with leading into Unbound. The swimming was very, very good. The running we'll talk about how we approached that, but they did. But they were, yeah. So using that big endurance fitness into the one big one, into the second one can be very, very beneficial. Leah, who qualified for Kona last year, she's doing this Ironman Wisconsin Kona, so she's going to do two Ironmans within a very shortish window, but she's using that fitness in the same regards. Like that's very exciting for her, and the same thing for Eric and Scott. It was very exciting to have these races in a very close proximity, instead of like, okay, yep, nail Unbound, okay, we'll recover for a week or two, and then we do like another 6 to 8 week block in a half Ironman. No, like that fitness is pretty much set. One thing about Unbound, I know that this year's been the podcast about Unbound, but this one is interesting to see, is we saw very quickly of how much cycling transfers into running and how little. It wasn't a game, but we definitely were thinking, Unbound is big, and yes, we know you have a half Ironman coming up, but we needed to make sure that the cycling was a priority because you're doing 200 miles. Like you need to be adapting to that work. But what we saw was that a lot of cycling really helps transfer with the aerobic side of running. And in the final 8 to 10 weeks into Unbound, there were weeks and maybe 2 weeks where we didn't do any run workouts. They were just 30 to 60 minutes of easy running, very easy. And, we're talking a minute per mile, 45 seconds per mile slower than marathon pace, just to keep the mileage up, just to kind of keep that durability in the legs. And so there were times where, you might go out for a long run and you might add some threshold into it. But every time that we did like a check, we like, okay, like let's do some mile repeats, or let's do some 3 to 4 minute threshold efforts. We do them and like, holy crap, this is like at peak level running, or even a little bit better. Like, yeah, I feel amazing. Like I then the feedback was typical comment. It was like I would go into like these run workouts and I would expect them not to go well because I haven't done run workouts. I don't have the confidence for that. But they would go and they would do them and they would perform at a huge level while feeling amazing. So that was interesting. So let that be a little bit of a lesson that you don't have to always do huge run workouts every week to kind of keep fitness. And say if an athlete gets injured, and athletes get injured, they think, oh, if I don't do a run workout this week, I'm just going to lose everything. I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I'm seeing, and this is something I've seen for many, many years, but it is a nice reminder that if training is consistent, across swim, bike, and run, you don't need big, big sessions to do that. Another thing too, like, and this could be that we both saw that their fitness on the bike during Unbound, obviously, the bike fitness increased tremendously. They could handle more. They could do much bigger sessions, growth with an FTP and 5 minute power, and all of that went up. And reducing running intervals for sure, really accelerated the cycling adaptation and growth. Because you can do all the shit, you can do all the hard work on the swim and the run, but if you're trying to make adaptations within another sport and you're not getting them, then either the stress somewhere in the plan is not good or you're not training hard enough. So what we saw is that reducing that running really accelerated cycling performance. And the same thing with the other athlete we're going to talk about. We saw that big time because she had a running injury, and we'll talk about that. So the one thing too is that with a lot of cycling, because like I said, we kept checking it with like mile repeats or longer tempos and things to make sure that they were ready for the 70.3s post Unbound. They didn't see any loss of fitness from threshold running, like 10K to an hour and slower. It never went away. The speed stuff, yes, it went away. And obviously, it's very neuromuscular, and that goes away quickly. But the cycling really held on to good threshold ability running. And then swimming, we always alternated between, 2 to 3 times a week, depending if there was an off day, but always 2 to 3 times a week, always working between an easy speed, threshold session and like a speed VO2 max session. So another thing to note is that both Eric and Scott at Unbound, both of them were top 100 overall in the 200 mile, which is pretty amazing. So just to kind of put that as a note in there. So let's talk about Eric. Boy, oh boy. So Eric, Eric is what I would call like, I've been working with Eric, 4 years now, 5 years. And I remember the conversation. It was post Ironman Wisconsin. It could have been like the Monday after Ironman Wisconsin. And I was sitting at a coffee shop downtown, and we were just having this conversation over the phone. And he was like looking for a coach, and it's like, yeah, okay, talking through like his previous coach and looking through his training. And his previous coach was great. He was a great coach, and just looking for something a little different, which was cool. And we started working together. And then you pretty quickly realize like, yeah, this dude is a workhorse. This guy puts in some like serious work, and he loves it. And just always, oh yeah, I mean, you know the person that, like you understand this kind of a person. But when you talk to him and you hear him, like you can just feel like this love of just pushing himself. When we talk about hard workouts, like there's like yeah, like there's like this certain level of excitement that is like so fun to listen to, and like he just loves getting after it. And the thing about Eric is he's a diesel. He's a very much a diesel athlete, and he's incredibly strong. Like his strength endurance is something that is very, very good. His ability to pace himself is very, very good. And so knowing that he's an endurance athlete, and so 2 weeks, a week after Unbound, right? That whole week, and does Unbound, does awesome, and in that week of training was very easy. 30-minute rides, a little bit of walking, a tiny bit of running, keeping the swimming going. But a lot of it was about refueling the engine. The training was active, but a lot of notes were, hey, are you making sure you're refueling every day, getting the hydration back going, like the carbohydrate re-intake post a 10-hour day was the most important thing. Getting back to like a very good hormonal state after a humongous hit, and also making sure the energy was very, very high that week. Because a lot of times post race, people just don't refuel well. And a lot of times post big 70.3 Ironman, a lot of notes that we're talking about are, the refuel, right? It's like if you do a huge ride on a Saturday, most people, like, they come on a Sunday and they're wrecked. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're just not refueling. So if you're doing like a 3,000, 4,000 kilojoule ride on a Saturday and you finish and like, oh, I'm not hungry, I'm like, okay, it's fair. But if you have a big workout the next day or a workout in general the next day, and if you're not refueling what you've lost throughout that ride, and then with the sleep that night, like, you're going to wake up just smashed. And so coming off of a day like that, like, yeah, refueling that whole week was super, super key. So that was good. A couple of notes, so Eric, for the 3 months leading into Unbound, the average hours on the bike were 10 hours. He was averaging 10 hours a week on the bike. Now we're talking about averaging the swims, averaging in the runs. So his weekly hours were pretty decent. One key thing, and I've talked about Eric in the past, is we utilize Zwift racing a lot. I mean, I bet that 6 months out of the year, 6 months out of the year, he's gonna Zwift race once a week. If that's like a Tuesday or it's a weekend, we're Zwift racing. And for him, because he's such a diesel, and it really, like, for that, like, it really does a great job of, one, trying to develop FTP or sustain high power at FTP. That's a big reason we use it. Aerobic support is another reason that we use it. And so earlier we would use it for just FTP development. And we've seen grow. I mean, there were times where Eric's pushing well over 4.5 watts per kg on some massive climbs, 30 to 40-minute climbs, 4.5 or above. I mean, Eric's a machine. But for Unbound block, we made the Swift, the this is Swift. There's combined two words there. The switch. So where on the weekend we would do like a longer Zwift race, okay? And then a couple, 10, 20 minutes easy. And then we would have a separate workout where it was a zone 2 style. And very much of what we predicted Unbound would be, where the first hour to 2 hours would be high intensity, and then getting into a state where we try to hold, say, 3.0 watts per kg for a long time. And that's what we would do, because that would mimic the race. And so inside, because he lives in Dubuque, which is cold, is very close to Madison, it's cold. And so replicating that, one, Zwift racing is fun, and front loading high intensity is a good way to burn off the carbs and again, get your body very proficient at utilizing it later. So that's what we would do. Like, that's a key session that we would utilize once a week or bi-weekly. That was a big one. Key sessions leading into Unbound, and they were very different from what Scott was doing. Eric, we were utilizing a lot of FTP, a lot. Well, I mean, what I mean by that a lot is weekly, we would start with like 90 to 100%. I'm sorry, 90 to 105% of FTP. And we kept trying to grow out the amount of time he would spend within that range. And that's a big range. I understand that. That's 105. It's a 15% range. But the thing is that it always was like, hey, if you feel good, I want you at the top end of the range. And that would start at like 3 to 5 to 8 minutes plus of building out as much time at the highest percentage of FTP that he could hold. And knowing that he's a diesel, our goal was to build out a lot of capacity work at the top end of FTP, knowing that he's exceptional at that 80% FTP. So we're working like in this reverse style, where on the weekend he would do a Zwift race, which was always like, say if it was 90 or 60 to 90 minutes, like his normalized power would always come out to 90%, 95%. So we knew that we were building out good capacity of that sweet spot threshold ask. But then during the week, we would do a lot of work at that upper ability of threshold. And during that time, I mean, we saw growth with an FTP that was pretty exceptional. And I think a lot of it just goes back to simply looking at it as aerobic capacity development and really trying to get as much bang for the buck out of some of those key sessions. And that's what we saw. So, yep. Um, mhm. Okay. So looking at uh, the the bike at 70.3, a week after, it was basically in line with one of his best 70.3s ever. The run as well, running running one of his best half Ironmans. And again, looking at the run sessions that we were doing leading into it, we had concerns like, okay, we're not sure how you're going to run. I mean, we had those honest conversations. I mean, I'm not going to say like, Eric, you're going to have the greatest run of your life, but we knew off of the data that we were looking at in the run sessions we were doing, and in the capacity of some of those Sunday long runs where we would do sessions that we were really checking in on that. He went off, and I was like, look, tracking the race. I'm like, holy crap, like this dude's rolling. He's rolling incredibly well. And so to come off of a week before one of the biggest races he's ever done, and then put together one of the better 7.3 races he's ever done, it really really worked out really well. And I think with Eric being a pretty slow twitch dominant athlete, really allowed himself to recover quite well. But his that this was a very interesting build with him, just because a week in between a race like that is very very risky, but it's also very very local to him as well. So he was second in his age group uh, at Des Moines, pretty amazing considering. And so now we're starting the big prep into Nice, and I think that Eric's going to have a really great opportunity at like a top 20, top 15 at Nice because of his ability, obviously. But the one big focus now, it is running. Uh, More running miles, some big long runs to kind of get that capacity to run 310 or so off the bike at Nice, which I think will be doable for him. So cool. Okay, so Scott also top 100, also a Kona qualifier. He's a top age group athlete wherever he goes. And the one thing with Scott a couple of years ago is that we were going through like these injury cycles on the run, and we talked about it a lot. Where like what's it coming from, and some of it's just stress in general. And so we really went with a very highly polarized model with Scott to eliminate stress, and that's stress from biking, that's stress from strength training. Because I find that with many athletes, the lifting that they're doing is actually too much. And I think athletes should lift. But what I found is that people underestimate the stress that strength training plays on their body and how it interrupts biking and running, and also can induce running injuries or just injuries in general. So while we can sit here and say, yes, strength training is very important, I always question that when people ask, okay, well, how much strength can I do? A lot of times it's a lot less than what they want because of the injuries that I have found that come from strength. A strength coach, you're like, oh, you're doing the wrong strength training. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But understanding the value of what strength plays into swim, bike, and run, it is important. However, dialing back the strength work with Scott helped with reducing injuries. Also, keeping himself very highly polarized, where at first it was challenging. It was very, very challenging to reduce a lot of the intensity with him. But when we didn't see fitness reduction, that was big. When we saw injuries go away because of reducing more intense sessions, that was big. And so for the last couple of years, Scott has kept himself very, very injury free. And that's been big. And that's been big because I remember, he was leading his age group. This was, I think it was the year it rained in Madison, and he was injured. It was right at the end of like the injury streak, and he was killing the age group. And he got to me on State Street, and we're talking about. He's like, I can't run. I'm like, shit, man. Like, you're gonna qualify today. He's like, I can't. I'm like, yeah, then just pull it, And he did. And I think after that is when we had that conversation of like, we really need to chill. Like, we need to be reducing things quite a bit. And ever since then, he's been running great. Running fitness has been really, really high off of not a lot of hard work, but just a lot of consistency of mileage. And Scott's one of those people where it's insane, right? Like he's incredibly motivated. He's incredibly talented, but on a coaching side, like we have to hold him back because like there are days like he'll kill it. put him on a track, he'll overshoot and will get injured. Where a lot of times athletes like that, like you really have to think minimal, minimal work for somebody who's a maximal kind of person. So, but his prep into Unbound was amazing. So, he always does like a camp that he does in California, like Solvang, where he goes out with a bunch of people and he does like a lot of the same routes. And knowing that the build into this camp was good, all of the rides that he was doing was at the highest percentage of his power or his FTP that he's been doing. So it's like, hey, yep, yeah, we're in a good spot. Like we're no doubt in a good spot. And so his weekly training or his blocks that we would go through were very like every 4 to 6 weeks we would change the focus. And that some of that was what we tried to achieve. And the first block that we would do was a very highly condensed block. And that block would look like say like a sweet spot session on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. The next day we would do a tempo, and then the next week we would do like a sweet spot one day, and then a zone 2 the next day. Like trying to get like 2 days in a row of highly condensed work, and the rest of it would be easy, 50%, 50%, 50% of FTP. And it's amazing how when I give people 50% of FTP, rides, they freaking hate it. But then once they do it more and more and more, 50%, 50%, they love it. They just see the benefit, right? Well, I could be going easier. I'm like, yeah, but when we've condensed the work really hard in these 2 days, just being able to ride easy, they feel better. They feel better. The freshness is better. And that's one thing with Scott where we said, for you to be injury free more, we need to really go easy on these easy days. 50%, 50% of FTP. Be okay going that easy. It's totally fine. I have another athlete, G. I mean, she's a monster at going easy. Like she's one of my best athletes ever that goes easy, and she's injury free. She performs at a very high level. But yes, of course, we're working hard as well. So we would do these condensed blocks, building out time at sweet spot, time at tempo, time at zone 2, all within 2 days to get like that really hyper condensed block of hit, not hit high intensity training, but like a hit of that work. And then we'd recover off of it. Because Scott is a pretty busy dude, a pretty high demanding job. So a lot of times those condensed hits with a lot of recovery is a great way to really maximize adaptation. Instead of always doing like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that's a good way of doing it, but it's not always the best way of doing it. So we would do that and we maximize that out pretty hard. And then we'd go into a very short VO2 max block. And the VO2 max block for Scott's very important to kind of keep that upper end present. But we didn't do it long, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of it. And it'd be a very hard hit of VO2 max. Recover, and then we go back into another sustained workload. So think of it as that sweet spot tempo block, okay, 4 or 6 weeks. And then we'd go into like a VO2 max block, could be Tabatas or 1 to 3 minute intervals, whatever, progressing as we needed to. And then we went into a little bit different of a strength oriented, lower cadence development kind of work with a lot of zone 2 high volume. Hope you can see how that moved, right? But it worked really, really well. And leading into the race, he did a gravel race, was on the podium for that, was in a lead break, very, very strong. But the two other people in that group were teammates, and of course they outmaneuvered the triathlete, and Scott was second, which was sick. So an amazing thing also during that time, his swimming was going incredibly well. Some of the best swimming he's ever done over extended periods. So that was really nice to also see swimming improve during this big bike block. Long runs the whole time were only 60 to 80 minutes. They were either easy runs or again, there were runs with, like 70.3 pacing threshold-esque work in there to kind of keep that strength in there. Scott was doing Rockford 70.3 post Unbound. And unlike Eric, Scott took a little bit longer to recover. And, the week after was essentially all like off free. Just let your body chill, let your mind chill. And we came back, and just like whatever we were doing, it was too much. And of course, like it's easy stuff, but it was just too much. It was either too much volume or too much running. And it's hard to know how somebody's going to recover. He's like, he just kept telling me, like, yeah, I don't feel good. I don't feel normal. I don't feel normal. Like, okay, we got to keep resting, you know? Like we have to keep resting the body, because if we keep loading dysfunction, which is a word that I use a lot with my athletes, if they're injured or not feeling great, like if you're not functional, you can't keep loading dysfunction. You have to keep resting. And that's what we did. And then finally, like 7 days out of Rockford, we just test it. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're responding. Like the body's ready now. And then we're good. We're roaring. We're roaring. We're feeling good. And so the one thing that we talked about pre-race with him about the race strategy was biking at a lower intensity. Bike has Scott has a lot of power. He's very aerodynamic. He's probably one of my most aerodynamic athletes. His CDA, aerodynamic athletes. But his CDA is very, very good. And he can produce high speeds at low wattage. And so that was the plan going in, and knowing that the run in the heat would be the biggest thing. And you overproduce that bike, you're going to underperform on that run. And he did that, and he swam really great. Well, really good. He didn't swim really great. He swam really good, but right where he needed to, and just ticking people off. And he built up 8 minutes or so, 9 minutes off the bike to second place. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm tracking, I'm there, like on the ground. And I'm like, in my head, I'm texting Mark, and like, he better not have overbiked. I'm like, that kind of time gap is big. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, if he overbiked, he's going to get a talking to. and and so he comes off, and I'm like a half mile into the run. And I'm like, how you feeling? He's like, I feel great. I feel great. He's like, my power was so low. And I'm thinking, okay, thank goodness, right? Because if you would have said, oh, I killed that bike, I'm like, oh man, this run's going to suck, right? But he's like, yeah, my power was low. I'm like, well, you put 8 minutes into second place, right? And so he's running, and he's doing great, right? He's like just cruising 7:45, 8 minute pace and that kind of heat. I'm like, this is perfect, And the thing that was happening is that there was somebody behind him running 6:45s, 6:30s, right? And he must have started pretty far back, because I didn't even see him on the track. I'd go back, nobody's there. Go back, nobody's there. And at some point, I mean, this guy just like chewed into him. And I mean, Scott cannot run 6:45s. I mean, this guy had an amazing day. So, but yeah, so either way, Scott was second place in his age group. But I think the most important thing was I mean, it wasn't his fastest run. Nobody ran fast at Rockford. It was 90 degrees out there. But it was like one of his best handled 70.3 runs, off of not a lot of run quality, a lot of bike quality. And that was the amazing thing, is that, that kind of ability was kind of like interesting, right? Like, because as a coach, like, you want to think you know everything. Yep, this happened because of that. And like that run performance happened because like we don't fully know, but our assumption is that with not running as much, not running as hard, the accumulative stress of running wasn't as present, to where the freshness was better than what we thought, to where it allowed him to run really well, which is counterintuitive to what a lot of people do. They get closer to the race, and they're like searching for confidence, searching for confidence. They do the hard runs, they do the hard workouts. And what they don't know, with such high work that close to a race, you're just like, you're just, your acute fatigue, your immediate fatigue elevates so fast, to then on race day, you have the confidence because you've done those big workouts. But because the stress is so high, then you add heat into that, you run like garbage. But sometimes in that week or two leading into the race, it's almost better to really reduce things a lot more and make them more zone 2 tempo-esque, and not get that such deep acute fatigue, to where you can perform really well. And that's our assumption of what happened, because it was an amazing race for him. I mean, we walked away thinking, yeah, second place, he got run down, but dang, Like that's a really great performance. So that was cool. That was really, really great. So two second place finishes in the age group, 1 week after Unbound, and then was it 3 weeks after Unbound? And both of them had really great races. It's one thing to just like get second place and have a crappy race, but for them to have second places and do really well, it was cool. And I think the nice thing is that, you're always learning as a coach, and you're always learning as an athlete. And I think there's a lot to take away from that kind of preparation. And of course, you can't like replicate that. But it is nice to know that you can run really well off of not a lot of huge run training. So yeah. Okay. So how long am I? Oh, 40 minutes. My gosh, I'm talking way too much. Okay. I'm gonna get this done in 10 minutes. So third final athlete, new athlete that came on, this spring actually. And we were having communication back and forth about training and my thoughts on it and what she was doing, but she wasn't coach. We were just having these conversations through email and sometimes through the phone. And then finally, she had bought like a training plan, and she's like, "Yeah, this isn't working for me." And so finally came on with coaching. I was like, "Okay, great." And you know, athletes don't always disclose everything to you about little aches and pains that they're feeling. And then we're kind of like moving through some training, and we do a run test. Because like the one thing she said to me is like, I'm not a good runner. I'm like, I don't know what that means, right? And we looked at previous training. Like, well, I see some training here in your training before that shows like you're a little better runner than you think. And we do a run test, and she kills it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you're a great runner. Like you are actually a really good runner. Well, not like you're better than what you think you are. And but then she's like, well, now my foot hurts. I'm like, well, have you been feeling your foot? Well, no, I haven't really been feeling it. Like, well, no, she's like, she has been feeling it. Like, so, and now we're like, we have plantar fasciitis. I'm like, oh crap, like this kind of sucks. And so Des Moines was coming up, and Des Moines, because she wants to qualify for 7.3 Worlds, she wants the podium, and now she can't run. Like 2 weeks in this beautiful relationship, and she can't run. I'm like, well, world's greatest coach, right? Injured already. But with that, the thing about plantar fasciitis, if you feel your foot, if you feel that arch, you need to lay off of it, because PF is really crappy. And so dealing with that, we had to stop, and we had that conversation of, listen, if you want to qualify for worlds or podium, you're not going to do it at Des Moines. And that's a hard conversation to tell somebody. And but you have to have it, because you can't say like, yeah, you're gonna do it, yeah, do it, and then have it go terrible, and then the coach look like a total dumbass. You have to tell them, like, you have to say like, no, you're not gonna do it there, and if you try it, you're gonna ruin your season, right? You're not gonna go from no running to running at Des Moines, and then pushing yourself, and then your foot totally blowing up, and then you're not going to race Rockford, and then the rest of your season's gone because your foot's totally screwed. So that conversation of you can swim and run Des Moines, but you're not running. And I think after we had that conversation a couple times, she believed it, and it was the best thing. And during that time, we're doing very small walk runs, 1 minute walk, 2 minute run, repeating that, 3 minute runs, 4 minute runs. And in that time too, she had sent me a lot of video with her running, which was incredibly helpful, because, I'm doing all this PT, I'm doing this PT. I'm like, well, just send me a run video. And I'm like, you're overstriding, like no amount of PT is going to fix an overstrider. If you are overstriding and you constantly have lower limb injuries, and you're not fixing your run gait, but you're always getting injured and you're doing the PT, well, you can put the world's biggest Band-Aid on it, and it's not going to fix it. If you're loading your body incorrectly, you will constantly be injured, and you will, potentially always be a subpar runner to your ability. And so we spent a lot of time talking about her running, going through some running drills, doing some things off of her video of like her body position and things that she was doing that was really kicking that foot forward. And we fixed it. And the cadence got a lot higher. The pain went away pretty quickly. And that was big. Like, and she's a remote athlete, so I don't see her all the time, but I need that video feedback. And so that video was really, really helpful to really getting that foot back on track, to where she's now loading the foot correctly with as not much braking as before. And so that was good. So in Des Moines, she swam really great, biked her brains out, and then stopped, which was nice. And then came out of Des Moines. We were able to keep running, and even into Des Moines, I think the longest we got to was like 6 to 8. Into Rockford was like 6 to 8 miles, which is still not a lot. But I kept saying, we are going to run as long as we can run that is functional. We're not going to like all of a sudden jam 13 miles in and jack your foot up and get you injured. And now you're not racing 2 half Ironmans. So you're going to go in under prepared, but you're going to be ready for it. Ready is what you're going to be. And so during that time, up the swimming, we really upped the biking, because all she was doing was walk running. And so I think one thing that I have in here is that leading into becoming a coached athlete, she was very uncertain about the kind of runner she was. And I don't think and this is common, right? And not blaming anybody, but you're looking at thinking she didn't know how good of a runner she was because she was never able to test it and understand that, okay, if you do these kind of workouts will get you to this kind of a result. And we did some run testing that showed her, well, wow, okay, well, this is exceptional. This is way better than what you've ever produced. And this kind of run testing shows that this kind of half marathon run is possible. And just a lot of uncoached athletes just don't have that experience to understand that, and what the numbers mean when they see a run workout, or what kind of run workouts are helpful to transfer things like that. So that was big. So getting her running potential, her running was still to be the running that we saw. Sorry, the running that we saw pre-Rockford, even though the volume of running was not very high, the running quality and the running speeds at a low volume, in my eyes, were very competitive. But the question is, how does an athlete handle going into a race with low volume, a little bit of an injury? Because that hesitation and that fear and that stress can ruin somebody. It can ruin them. But it didn't, She's strong. Like mentally, shit, she's mentally like break through a freaking wall. I saw her after the race and she was, limping, but she qualified and she podiumed. So we got what we were looking for. So one thing I think about with her and her running, and even going forward, worlds, other big races coming up, is that running workouts for her are not always going to be what's geared to make her faster. Sometimes running, because looking, she doesn't have a base of running. And so we need a base of running. So knowing that she's a good runner already, without a base, aerobic foundation of running, which means everything else underneath it won't be lifted. Just running generally, keeping her running for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, that will improve 5K. That'll improve mile. That'll improve threshold. That'll improve everything. Just running. So you don't always need to do big runs to be a better runner. Sometimes simply running is enough of a stimulus to make you better. But that was key, enough of a stimulus. If you're not adding stimulus to your running, to your current level, you're never going to become a better runner. You're going to be the same runner you've always been. You have to add stress, appropriate stress, accumulative stress to make yourself better. And so for her right now, that accumulating stress is just simply running more each week, holding that together as you move through it. So during that period of time, we hit cycling very, very hard. I would call this filling out the engine of her ability. So what that looked like was 3 bike workouts a week, 3 legitimate bike workouts a week. Now remember, before you think I'm a terrible coach, you're not running a lot. So that run stress is low, just like Eric and Scott, but for a different reason. So we thought we could really hammer home some big bike workouts, threshold bike workout, tempo bike workout, and the weekend was always hard zone 2 riding. very specific to the race. Not quite doing 70.3 power, but pretty close for more duration. So we would do a VO2 max workout, I think every second week or every fourth week, but a lot of it was filling out the engine with threshold, tempo, and hard zone 2. Minimal running, which allowed that biking to really flourish, really flourish. So if you're injured, I think it's very key to stop, and this is common, right? If you have a leg injury, if you cannot run, a lot of people will fixate on that injury. They fix on it. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm like, yeah, but you can do all of this. You can improve yourself in this. And once you get out of this mentality of a run injury and you move it toward, I'm going to become a great biker. I'm going to become incredibly strong. I'm going to become the best biker I've ever been. Well, you're a better biker. You're going to come out of the running better because you've increased your biking, which helps with your running. But if you just reduce everything because the stress is overtaking you, well, then you've lost everything. And thankfully, she's freaking strong, and she was not giving up, and she was always asking me for more. And some of it was like, yeah, let's rock it out. Or some of it was like, nope, 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 we got to chill. We got to chill. Because you can still burn somebody out and injure somebody with too much cycling. So it's not like give them everything you got kind of thing. No, like it has to be appropriate. And thankfully she loves working out hard. And so we did for the long rides, multiple 3+ hour rides. The goal was to overreach her 70.3 TSS target, right? So doing more TSS in the bike than what she'll do in the race, overshooting her race kilojoule budget. So like, let's say if I do a half Ironman, my kilojoules are like 2,000 kilojoules. So for long bikes, I'm going to be doing 2,500, 3,000 kilojoule rides, right? Over demanding the energy expenditure. Very, very key. And doing that made her legs incredibly strong. The threshold bikes, the tempo stuff, all just really, really utilizing that. Fueling, we added more carbs, more sodium. This is an area that any new athlete that I have, consultations that I do, people don't have a plan, or they have this weird plan, or this plan that is just so elaborate that it goes terrible. And most people underfuel. They just underfuel. And so when we had the conversation of race fueling, it was about adding more carbs, more sodium. So on race day, swam amazing. She biked even more amazing. Put herself right near the top of the age group. Got on the run. And just running consistent. Walk, run, as planned. Consistent. And you look at the file afterwards. It's like the pacing never slowed. Never slowed. Just the walk, running. Like that plan of that little bit of a walk break kept the running output the same. Amazing. And so you think about the turnaround of being coached, getting injured, not running, not being able to do your first 70.3, swim biking it. It was a terrible start. Like it was a pretty terrible start. But there's like this self-belief that, listen, you are a good athlete. You can do this. You can see that. You enjoy working out hard. These things are possible. It allowed her to just stay on track and believe that she can accomplish that. And it was awesome. Like it was really great to see that and to see her out in race course and see her doing her thing and just never giving up, and like on there giving her the splits on the course. Like, you're right here. If you just keep doing this, can you keep doing that? She's like, yeah, I can keep doing that. Well, you freaking keep doing that, because you're gonna get on the podium and you're gonna get that world spot. Was super cool. So not all coaching relationships start amazing. Some of them aren't always glamorous. Injuries do happen, and some of them are like, I have athletes that come into me that have like a labral tear. And I'm like, you going to get surgery on that? Like, no, I'm just going to deal with it. And we deal with that. Like you'd be surprised, and we navigate these things. And, she came in with a little bit of a PF issue and we got a little injured, but but there's so many ways to work around it. And I think the beauty of, again, like of these kind of podcasts are, you just heard a story. If you're still listening, if you are, freaking A, I applaud you for it. Um, there are so many ways to earn a podium at a race, at a big 70.3 at an Ironman. And a lot of my athletes this year are doing Ironman. They're trying to qualify for Kona this year and next year. And I can tell you that a lot of the training that they do, the path that they get there, are all very different. Some are easy. Some don't get injured. Some just eat it all up. Some people, they're up and down. They're up and down for a lot of reasons. But with these three, it was all very different. The work that we did leading into these three 70.3 podiums. Yeah, like it's just like that's the beauty of coaching, and it's like you're navigating this with athletes weekly, right? Each week you're communicating. You're thinking, okay, how are we doing? What can we do? What do we need to switch? All these kind of things, and yeah, super rewarding. So, if you have any questions, let me know. We under an hour. I think this is the longest podcast that I've done solo, and I need a coffee. I need a refill. So have a good day. Talk to you later. Talk to you next week. See ya.